busy schedule to come and hear about a potentially anxiety-provoking topic, but definitely important as all of you and me and some of us go through the process of figuring out not only where your child's going to go to college, but kind of how to make it work financially. So the counselors have put together a really great PowerPoint for all of you with lots of information. There's some new information hot off the presses, so we're glad you're here. Also, just spread the word to your friends that couldn't make it that we are videotaping them this year, and so they will be, the presentation will also be on our website by probably later this afternoon. But again, thank you and welcome. We have Mrs. Cowgill, Mrs. Cuneo, Mr. Borchard, we're all back. Hooray. Mr. Fuller in the back, Mrs. Bowles, Brother Jack, and Brother Tom. So welcome, and without further ado, I will turn it over to Mrs. Cowgill.
Good morning. So, financial aid. I'm not texting or anything. My little presentation's on here because it's behind me. So I'm not that bad. Not quite. So, often financial aid can feel to be one of the most scary or overwhelming pieces of the whole college application process. And so today we want to give you kind of an overview on what to expect. Some of you may have a few years before you go through this. Some of you may be about to go through it with your senior. And so we want to let you know that we are here to give you an overview of what happens in this whole process, and to kind of give you, in a lot of ways, like a vocabulary lesson on a lot of the terms that get thrown around when you're discussing financial aid and financial aid packages with colleges and with your students. So we are counselors, obviously. We're not financial advisors by any means, and so the advice we are giving you is simply based on what the process looks like for you and what our experience with our families has been in going through this process. So if you need specific advice that is, to your financial situation, your financial advisor, the person that prepares your taxes, can often be very helpful in letting you know exactly what your situation may be. And there's a lot of technicalities in this whole thing. So just keep that in mind. We would also like to make you aware, there's a couple phenomenons that are going on in the college application world when it comes to targeting families. And the last couple years we've seen a lot of companies or services that are being advertised to you guys in guaranteeing financial aid or offering their services, not offering, but for compensation, they will prepare the financial aid forms. We would tell you, you don't need to do that, and in fact, you shouldn't do that. The financial aid process, while it can be tedious, much like preparing your taxes, there's really no mystery to it. It's what your income is, what's reported to the government, and so there's not as many gray areas as might be represented sometimes to families in ways of guaranteeing your child of getting certain financial aid packages. So if you ever are going to contemplate that, I would suggest talking to your child's counselor and making sure that is something that you would want to spend your money on in the future. The other thing is you do not have to pay to get scholarships of any kind. There are often services that will email you or your child in all of this once they start getting all the college emails saying that for a flat fee or for, they'll find a finder's fee for scholarships. All of the search engines that we use are free of charge. And again, anything that's reputable is not going to be charging you a fee for a scholarship. Okay, so those are our warnings for today. So I think I got elected to start. I guess I'm the only one among all our counseling staff that has paid for kids to go to college and gone through this whole process. We had 6 kids between my husband and I. We have 6 kids, and we survived. And with the last one still in college, and I don't think he's ever going to leave. So he's on his PhD, but our agreement was then we will help you with your undergraduate, and then graduate degrees are on your own. So it is doable. It is something that you can manage. We at one time had 6 in college between master's programs and bachelor's degrees. So we still have our home, we still have our cars, so it can be done. We were lucky enough to have some kids that were, outstanding academically and were able to get merit-based aid. We had some kids that were athletes, and one went to a Division I school, another one went to a Division III school, and we're still able to get aid for athletics. So there are many ways that you can find to fund education. So we want to kind of go through some of the terms with you. Sometimes you'll hear direct costs and indirect costs of attending college. Direct costs are pretty simple. They're basically what the college is charging you. Often there are times there are fees. I don't know why there are all these fees on top of tuition, but there are. Sometimes there are health services, parking, those kind of things. And then we have indirect costs. So those are the things that are not right up front and can be somewhat negotiable. Books, transportation. If your child's going to attend school back east, there's the reality of having to, if you want to, bring them home at Thanksgiving, breaks, you go to visit them. That can add up as well. And so those are things that should be considered when you're actually choosing, where to have your child go to school. So you're going to add those direct costs and the indirect costs to get the actual cost of attendance, or the COA. And obviously that's going to vary significantly from college to college. Tuition being the biggest thing that will fluctuate that amount. And so that's the real amount of what it's going to cost to attend college. So financial aid is a very, very general term. Okay, so it encompasses many different types of financial aid. So financial aid, sometimes students will come in and they're filling out their applications and there'll be a box. Do I want to apply for financial aid? Yes, you always want to apply for financial aid. Many of us are lucky enough to maybe not qualify for a lot of need-based aid based on your financial situation. And so families will often say, oh, we're not going to fill out the FAFSA, or we're not going to go through that. But any type of financial aid, merit-based aid, scholarships, grants, 99% of the time we're going to require that the FAFSA is filled out as well. So that's something you should just all plan on doing, whether you like it or not. Okay, so financial aid can be spent on funds to help the child pay for college expenses. It can go to books. It can go to room and board. Technically, it can apply to travel. So anything that is related to attending that college. So sources of financial aid, we have federal government money, and we're going to talk specifically about some examples of these. That's where the FAFSA comes in, because that is through the federal government. We have the state. In our state, in California, we have the Cal Grant. So the federal equivalency of that is the Pell Grant. And then we have the Cal Grant in the state of California, and I'm going to talk more specifically about that as well. Then we have aid, whether it's scholarship, merit aid, grants that can be given that are given from the individual colleges. And then we have private sources. So those can be a company you work for, it can be a community organization, big corporations. There's lots of opportunities out there. And again, at the end, Mr. Borchard's going to share with you where you might find some of that. So types of financial aid, and again, we're going to break this down. Merit aid, scholarships, grants, loans, and employment opportunities, often called work study. So we're going to kind of run down what each of those means and what the ramifications of using them are in some situations. So what is financial need? Like, what does it mean? Where do they get that number from? So basically, you're taking that COA, or the cost of attendance that you figured out, how much is it going to cost to go to the school, and you are going to subtract the expected family contribution. Now, this is where it can get a little sad. Your expected family contribution, and you subtract that, and that gives you your actual financial need. That is what that student needs financially to attend that school. Okay, and again, that is going to vary. So how do you find out what your expected family contribution is? I always suggest you do this on a day when you're sad or mad about something already, because it's going to make you sad or mad when you do it. Because there are calculations. So this is something that the government has come up with a formula as to what your family specifically can afford to help, your child with to go to college. So it can come from your contribution, and on some occasions it can come from student contribution. So if the student has funds from somewhere, that is also counted in that equation. So there are calculators that you can use to find out your expected family contribution. And so finaid.org is one. There's two versions, the long and the short. You might just want to do the short one to begin with. The long is, pretty tedious and asks for some very specific stuff that you'll need your tax returns for. But if you don't have a child that's a senior this year and you just want to find out, I would just recommend using the short one. So you put all this stuff in, and it gives you a number that you think is usually a little high. And honestly, you'll probably look at it and be like, we don't have $20,000 just laying around. It goes to our house payment. It goes to, to our car payments, to our kids' tuition at high school. So there's many things, but that is your expected family contribution. Now, it does not change from school to school. So your expected family contribution does not change based on the tuition of the school. That is what your family can afford wherever your child attends. So if you have a school like USC, your expected family contribution is the same, and therefore your need-based aid will be higher at a school that has higher tuition. Now, that does not mean that you will get more money from USC. What it means is you probably will get offered more loans to pay for the education. Now, there are some schools, some of the Ivy schools, Stanford, that will guarantee families that make less than, is it 100 now? 60. It's higher than it was, I think maybe 70, 80,000, that they will meet any need-based aid. So there are a few schools out there. Unfortunately, those schools are so ridiculously highly selective that it's not a backup plan for you to use that approach. I'll just go to Stanford, and then it will be okay. Okay, so your financial calculations are always going to be based on, well, this gets a little complicated right now, on the year before and your full completed tax return for that year. So your net price is the amount that a student pays after an institution offers you scholarships and grants, and you have all that. We're not talking about loan money. We're talking about any aid that you are not going to be repaying. So once you take that and subtract that, that's going to give you the net price. When you are coming down to the nuts and bolts of making that decision with your child, this is where sometimes you have to have very honest conversations about what your family is willing to do and what they can do. And so that's where you really need to look at not the loans, because when they send you financial aid packages, they slip those in there. And you're like, oh, this is not bad. And then you realize you're taking out $20,000 worth of loans for 1 year, because your financial aid packages are always for that 1 year. So just be mindful of that. And again, we're happy to look at those with you and help you decipher what those look like. So every college will have a net price calculator on their financial aid page. So that can be helpful as well once you kind of have some of this information. So the different types of aid. Now that I've depressed you all, right? And you're like, okay, no one's going to college. We are going to now look at the different types of aid. So scholarships, those are the ones we always, where do I get scholarships? Where do I get scholarships? Those do not have to be paid back, so they're very desirable, okay? And things that you should be looking. So institutional scholarships, those are the ones that are coming specifically from the different colleges. Colleges are making this a much easier process for you to go through in the last, I'd say, 5 years. Most schools now, if you qualify for certain scholarships, will just put you in the pool to be considered for those scholarships. Or they will at least indicate to you, you qualify for this scholarship, there's an extra essay to write, would you like to apply for this scholarship? So they are trying to make it easier for families to navigate this. But sometimes you do need to seek these out. We have students that come in our office all the time and they're applying to a particular school and they're like, can I get nominated for this scholarship, or would I qualify for this? So it's a combination of, you know, the schools offering and then you guys doing some research and on our suggestions as well. So scholarships can come from anything from the student's actual GPA. There are many schools that if you have a 3.5 or above, I'm thinking the University of San Francisco, you qualify for a certain amount of scholarship, and it's just a done deal. If you qualify, then you would get this money. So that's GPA. Some schools give scholarships based on test scores. So we have students that might test remarkably well, and they will get rewarded for that as well. It can be something like performing art or fine art, that they have a talent and they're going to receive a scholarship for that. Of course, we hear about the ever powerful athletic scholarship, which is getting less and less of full rides and more of partials. So it's turning into, from I would say the vast majority of student athletes, a portion of what their financial aid package is. So the full ride scholarship in athletics is becoming something very rare, actually. And then there are obviously some other stuff. Sometimes it's community service-based scholarships that they might get if they've done so many hours. There's a lot of things that they might qualify for. And then we have outside scholarships. Sometimes your own employer might have a scholarship. Those are something to ask your HR department or take a look at if there's something at work, an organization that you belong to. Sometimes it's your parents may belong to an American Legion or some type of community-based organization that your child can qualify for. And again, Mr. Borcher is going to show you at the end kind of how to find some of those opportunities. Grants. So grants also do not have to be paid back, so we like scholarships and grants. Those are great. So we have our Pell Grant. Pell Grant is need-based. So again, for a lot of students, they don't qualify for the Pell Grant. So again, you need to demonstrate a pretty high level of financial need. And that's giving you the deadlines right there. There's the Federal Supplement Educational Opportunity. And again, that's based, need-based. It's not quite as stringent. And each college has that money at their discretion, how they are dispersing that. And then in California, we have the Cal Grant. So the Cal Grant applies if you have a student who graduates from a high school in California and is attending a college in California. Okay, so if they graduate in California but decide to go to school in Oregon, it's not gonna go with you. Okay, so that may or may not be another incentive for your family to explore some of the options within California if that is important to you. Cal Grant A is typically the one for students that are going to four-year schools. And then there are Cal Grants for students that go to a community college, because sometimes students will be like, oh, I don't need to apply for financial aid. You still might qualify for enough to pay for books or even, fees and tuition at a junior college. So that's something you would want to explore well if that's something your child is going to be looking at. And then C for vocational programs, so it's some technical schools or things of that nature. Residency requirements are there. So Cal Grants are need-based and merit-based, which means you have to have a certain financial criterion as well as a certain GPA. Okay? And it's not the higher the GPA is, the more money you get. It's just you have to have the GPA to qualify for. Okay, there's a form the students bring to us, and it must be submitted by March 2nd. Oh, and you need to list the California school among your first few on your FAFSA if you want to have that. All right, Brother Tom's going to talk about the depressing loans.
Thank you. Loans are fun for the government or something,
Yeah.
not for you. Certainly grants are like the nice soft word, but loans are the ugly word. Of course, colleges put financial aid packages together for you, and you'll hear somebody say, I got, $50,000 in aid. What's really critical is that you look at the components of that aid, because loans can be a significant amount of that. There are obviously several kinds of loans, and you can see there the Federal Perkins loan, the interest rate is 5%. Maybe that sounds good to you. It's probably better than liquidating something you have in order to pay for college. But the good thing is that interest will not accrue while the student is in college. So it's payable after graduation. Then the Stafford loans, two types. The interest rate 4.29 for 15-16. Subsidized loans means the government pays the interest. We like that. Unsubsidized loans, government doesn't pay the interest. You pay the interest. We don't like that nearly as much. So when you get a package from a college, you must go through every part of it to determine which is better among 3 or 4 or 5 colleges, because they'll put different loan packages together for you when they're meeting the gap or the need that exists. And of course, payable after college. Then the one that you're going to love, which is the Federal Direct Parent Plus loan. You could go out and find your own loans. Maybe you do, but that's not necessarily desirable. But there is also the ability for parents to get a loan. And again, the benefit to it is that repayment begins after the final disbursement. So you have time. Of course, that's probably not so bad if you have one child and you can schedule everything, but maybe you have 2 or 3 and you're going, I'll be paying loans like forever. And that's not a pleasant thought. The government of ours believes that the parent should pay toward education and that the child should pay toward education, hence federal work study. But guess what? There isn't enough work, and there aren't enough funds for federal work study at every college to the clip that students are applying for. So I'll just give you one for instance on ASU, which is this year, or I should say last year. Arizona State University, which is the largest public college, had 19,000 applications for jobs, okay? And they did employ 9,000, paying $38 million. So that shows you one school, granted a huge school, but that's what the work profile looks for students with university-generated jobs. Colleges can't exist without student work. Nationally, 75% of college students work, and 40% of employed students work 20 hours a week. I put those stats in there to give you a sense of your family discussion. Is it, well, you just go to school, honey, and we'll pay the bills? Or is it like, well, you're going to help us pay for some of this, because then you have skin in the game. So there are different conversations that go on. But 75% of college students work, that's significant. And 40% of those work 20 hours a week. Something that your tax person may not know, and you may take a note of this, is this already on Power? Is it on?
It will be.
It will be. This will be up for you to have. So a lot of accountants don't know about the American Opportunity Tax Credit. You can get tax credit for any child in your home that is in college, up to the tune of $2,500 for each child. It's not for room or board, but it is something that is income-based. And you can see the income basis of it there. And I think it's pretty generous, but just to be wise about taking advantage of every piece of credit that you can get back. Applying for financial aid is not really as big of a deal as you hear it being made out to be. There are people out there who will offer to take care of everything for you for a measly fee of $5,000, say, you would be very foolish to pay that because the application itself is free. How many of you have filled it out one time? A few people. Did you pay $5,000 to somebody? No, thank God. All right, so this can be done by normal people. And it becomes available on January 1 of 2016. January 1 is the first date that you will be able to do it. A lot of it is biographical material. And then the beauty about it is that there's an interface with your tax form from last year, your IRS forms, and it populates a lot of the details once you tie in the interface. How does it work? So the student submits FAFSA. It goes to the government, obviously. The government sends it out to schools and lending agencies, and then it comes back to you as a student aid report, and then you edit, modify, add more schools, whatever your final list is, and send it back. And then that goes back to the colleges, and somewhere in typically April, you're getting a statement of financial aid from whatever colleges accepted you. So the college is going to send you maybe 2 pages saying you get this much in a grant, you get this much in loans, and your contribution, the nice part, is X, all right? So you then compare and you say, this is the best deal for us, because at the end of the day, choosing a college is big part economic decision. I think all of us would agree. But the one thing to think about, a time to take advantage of the estimated family contribution data to go back and analyze that might be when your child is a freshman or sophomore in high school, because we still tend to tell kids, you get good grades, we'll take care of the money, we'll pay for college. That isn't always the safest thing to do, okay? If we as a family learn how to do an estimate of what our family will have to pay, that's a much better, healthier approach to things. So when I ask some students, well, do you have a sense of your family situation? No, I have no idea. No idea. So those conversations, I believe, are good. Probably 200 or 60 schools up in that area, many of them top private schools and some public schools like Michigan, also require deeper levels of detail because they're looking at institutional aid that they're going for their school, and it's called the CSS profile. And they look at equity in homes, and oftentimes they want some of this information in an early decision situation. So that's another piece, along with FAFSA. CSS profile is a financial aid piece that is required by, does anybody have an estimate? Is it about 250 schools? Yes, somewhere in there that require it. Students will not receive institutional aid without filling out that application. That's institutional aid. I'm not saying government aid. So fill out FAFSA, and if your school requires it, fill out CSS, because without CSS, you're saying, I don't want anything, okay? And that's not a good signal to be sending out. Special circumstances, you can report them to the financial aid office. For example, changes in status in the family situation, unemployment, etc. Situations where the student cannot obtain parent information. So there are ways to do that. You're not able to report it on FAFSA itself on the form. Some questions. My taxes will not be completed until April. Should I wait to file FAFSA? No. Apply now after January 1. and use the will file indicator. You're going back to last year's W-2s. This is going to get tricky here in a minute. So even though you're in this year filing, you're using last year's W-2s. And then when this year's W-2s come around, you can make the adjustment.
So 2014.
Yeah. That's last year, isn't it? 2014. I'm a religious, I don't pay taxes. Okay. Will my financial aid be the same for every college? Well, it depends. So each year you must fill out FAFSA. It's not a one and done. So your reward may change. Circumstances may change in the family. FAFSA, what does it look for? It asks for financial information on non-custodial parents, okay? But CSS does ask for that. Does FAFSA ask about home equity? No. Does CSS ask about home equity? CSS is invasive, okay? Just think that way. These are private schools, 250 or so, that are looking at giving institutional aid. They're going to ask more invasive questions. So don't write, I don't think really this is your business. If you have rental property, you must report the equity of other real estate. Rental property is usually considered an investment and not a business investment. Business and investments make a huge difference in FAFSA and CSS, because in FAFSA, you don't have to report about a business unless you have 100 plus employees. All right? So there are technicalities. Does FAFSA ask about retirement accounts? No. It doesn't ask about qualified retirement assets such as these. Does CSS ask? Not about funds in the account already, but funds that are going to be put into it from this year's income. Okay? So you need to be looking at that. CSS asks about home equity for a primary home. One little hint there, you don't have to give the highest estimate, like going up and down the street and getting the highest price because you want to show off. Zillow, some people say, has the fairest price, so you might look at that. Fair meaning low. Okay. This is big. President Obama made a change to FAFSA. Have you heard about it? Kind of, sort of. You don't read a lot about FAFSA in this group, I can tell. In 2017, FAFSA will use prior year tax returns, removing the hassle of having to have taxes done so early. That sounds like great news. This will assist taxpayers who have very complex taxes. FAFSA can be filed in October. That's big. Remember I said January? Now it can be October, several months earlier. The data retrieval tool will pick up the relevant information from the IRS. That's the interface with the IRS. Tax returns, underline this, tax returns for 2015 will be used twice. Okay? Because I can see people running it through in your mind. If 2015 is a fantastic year for you, I'm happy for you. Congratulations. But if there's a way that you could defer a bonus, for example, to the following year, that might be a good thing to do. So, because the way, since he has backed up the timing to October, then that is the year that's going to be used, and it'll be used again the following year, so to speak. So we have two hits on 2015 in terms of determining your W-2s. It's a one-time unique thing that's going to, or is that really a two-time unique thing that's going to happen? And then we'll get back to normal again. So with every good law, it helps some people and it will hurt other people. All right. We're going to hold the questions to the end, right? Yeah, I think we want to go through and then do questions, if that's okay. And Scott, you're on for it here.
Thank you. All
right, so now that Brother Tom did a great job getting you guys really excited for the whole college process, what my job is to do now is to go over some different areas that will hopefully save you guys some money, some tools that will make finding those scholarships that we're talking about really easy, and not require you to do a tremendous amount of work. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is a program that we call WUI, or the Western Undergraduate Exchange. Okay, this is a fantastic program that a lot of the schools on the West Coast got together and they said, hey, you know, we really want students to kind of stay on this West Coast. What we're willing to do is if you have a student from your state apply to some of our schools, we'll give them near in-state tuition if you do the same for our students in a lot of schools in your state. So basically, you can go to this site and you'll pull up this list of all the schools that are part of WUI. And what it looks like is you'll have in-state tuition, which is always a lot lower than out-of-state tuition. What WUI does is it'll go in there and give you a certain amount of money, one for just living in California. All right, so your students are living in California, going to school in Washington. Okay, and it'll cut off maybe $9,000 to $12,000 of your out-of-state tuition. So you're going for almost the same price as you would a Cal State here or a UC here. All right, now this will vary from school to school. Okay, for instance, you'll find usually smaller schools on this list. You're not going to find you will find University of Arizona, but they will only offer the WUI for one major program, and that is mining engineering. So if your student really wants to learn how to mine and work in gold mines and things like that, fantastic program for them. They're going to Arizona for not much money. Every school is going to be a little bit different. You're not going to find University of Washington on there. All right, if you find University of Oregon, I believe that's like one or two majors in there that typically students don't declare for right off the bat. All right, but you'll find schools, Eastern Washington, Western Washington, Southern Oregon, Utah. I think Utah's on there. So there's a lot of different schools on there that will make a huge impact for you if your students are interested in that. Okay, so it's something to definitely consider. Once they start forming their list, maybe you want to pull up WUI and say, okay, hey, which schools are part of WUI that are on your list? Some of the schools will have requirements to be part of this program. Sometimes it's a 3.2, sometimes it's a 3.5 GPA. Other schools, you're just automatically applying for WUI because you live in California. So it depends on the school, but the website, every time you click on a school, will show you exactly what the requirements are for their program. But it's definitely something to take a look at. I have a lot of students that want to go to school out of state, but know that they can't afford out-of-state prices, so we go here, we pull up the list, and we start going through those schools, and that's how we form their list. All right, that way. What's that?
Limited number that they offer them?
As far as?
Well, I'm saying, you know, if there were like 200 California kids that wanted to go to this one school in Colorado.
It depends on the school. Every school will have limitations or certain criteria. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's not a blanket statement. Okay. Okay, so there are some other schools too that offer different merit-based awards, scholarships, just because of, like we're talking about, your tests or your GPA. So these are two examples: Oregon and Alabama. Okay, two very different schools, different parts of the country. But you can kind of see how, you know, if you have a certain GPA, you can get annual rewards as long as they're maintaining that GPA throughout their time in college. All right, this is just an example that a lot of schools have these programs. And it doesn't hurt to look, and a lot of times you're going to be eligible for these programs just because you're applying. All right, but you always want to double check and look at the scholarship page and see if there is a separate application that you have to fill out. Okay, so frequently asked questions. How do I find other forms of financial aid? Where do I go to find the connections besides Googling? Googling takes away a lot of the hard work because you just throw it in there and probably the first site that pops up is the one you're looking for. We have two different sites that we have links to all these different programs. One is your student's Naviance that you guys can have your own access to. Contact your student's counselor. We'll provide you with the login information and you'll be able to access some of the scholarship pages and whatnot. And I'll show you the scholarship pages in a second. But Blackboard is probably your best option. All of your students on their Blackboard page have a grade-specific counseling page. And when you go there, it'll show you, let's see here. It'll look like this. And you can go to external links, and there's a nice little folder that has financial aid and scholarship links. These are all the links that we would suggest that you guys take a look at. They're all free. You're not paying for anything, right? Because like we said, if you're paying for something, probably not super legitimate, all right? So at the very top is your FAFSA. You got your Cal Grant. There's the WUI. You got Merit Aid Scholarship Search, FastWeb Scholarships, and FinAid. So I want to talk a little bit about these scholarship searches here. So we talked about scholarships and how your company might have some. There are thousands and thousands of scholarships that are available to students every year. A lot of them go unused because simply people don't know about them. So with a little work, you can find some of these scholarships and maybe you get $250 here, $500 there. $500 will buy your kid 2 books in college. But hey, it's better than nothing. Okay, and those add up, so you can have multiple scholarships. And there is stories out there, and we know of one student who in college, instead of getting a job, they dedicated their time to doing these searches, applying to all these scholarships, and they paid for college just from scholarships. Now that takes time. They had to write a lot of essays, but they went to school for basically free because they dedicated their time to looking for specific scholarships that they were eligible for. And what these searches do is you go in and you create a profile. Hopefully your student is doing this. They're filling out all this information about themselves. And then what the program does is it'll go through the database of all the scholarships and it'll kick back the ones that you're eligible for. And you can take a look at them. You can see which ones require essays, which ones you just have to fill out a simple application. All right? The ones where you have to do a little bit more work are going to be a little bit more selective. They're going to want essays, but they could be $1,000, $10,000, who knows? Okay? So FastWeb and scholarships.com are those are the 2 best ones to use for this scholarship search. Also, I was mentioning Naviance. On Naviance, we have a scholarship search as well. Every time we get information about a scholarship, we put it on here. We let you guys know, we let the students know that there's another scholarship out there that we heard about. If you're eligible, might be a good thing to consider. So when you guys go into Naviance and you go to the Colleges tab, at the very bottom you're going to see scholarships and money. Okay, this is a great place to go. When you click on the scholarships, it's going to kind of give you this breakdown. So you got to keep in mind, all these scholarships have deadlines. So if your student's a senior right now, a lot of these scholarships are going to be a little bit earlier in the school year, so they need to kind of get on top of it. Right? And scholarships are not just for seniors in high school. There are some scholarships that are only available for freshmen and sophomores in high school, or for juniors. And these scholarships carry over until you go to college. All right, so it's never too early to start looking for some of these scholarships and getting this free money that you don't have to worry about paying back. So on here we break it down real nice, the maximum award. So you can see like the Ron Brown Scholarship Program, it's $10,000 a year. It's merit-based. All right, so there's no essay for that one, but it's all strictly off merit-based. There's one here that's $40,000. Okay, and then there's some that are $500, $1,000, and it kind of shows you what is required of those scholarships. Sometimes students go, well, I'll apply to all these scholarships, but I'm not writing any more essays. I'm writing enough of that. Well, we can look at that. Okay, but these are all options for you guys to find that free money out there. So again, these are the websites that we're talking about today. They're everywhere. And if you don't go to our sites to go to the links, just Google it and it'll pop up. All right, but if they're asking you to pay money, you're probably in the wrong spot and you probably want to relook at what the site you're at. Okay, because there will be some that are 1 letter off or something like that to try to trick you into paying money for them. Okay. All right. With that being said, open it up for questions. So anything that you guys have? Yep.
Yes, can you direct students and families to websites with Naviance to do career exploration, that they can find out career clusters like the realistic, investigative, and all that? So-
It's, yeah, all on here. So at the top, you can see here, there's a whole tab there that's dedicated to just careers. You know, so that's another opportunity for them to start exploring some of those career opportunities out there.
The reason I asked that question is because we're having a career night November 17th, and it's arranged according to career clusters, the arts. I only have 6 people for that. Business, 9 people. STEM, I have 8 people. Health, I'm really desperate. 4. Social science service, 6. This is for all students in the school, and it's for career exploration, not job interviews. So we encourage you to get your kids to go to this. Some parent last night who I lined up, after I spoke to him a while, he was questioning, well, what about the involvement of the kids? How many kids? And it's sort of pathetic for 1,300 students. You know, maybe we're happy if we've seen maybe up to 100 kids. So we have an invested time of these parents and graduates. If you could encourage your kids to go to this, it's worthwhile. You should see the evaluations that come out of it, of those who attend, and of the reps and the kids. So please keep that in mind.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Manager.
And if anyone wants to volunteer your spouses, here, I picked up 3 good ones last night. So see me afterwards. It's Tuesday night. It's from 6:30 to 8 o'clock, November 17th.
Where is it?
In Bob Hopeson.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do Pal guys work for movie schools?
For the movie schools?
No. Just for California.
Just California. Yes.
So with the FAFSA early fill, does that mean we can fill it out in October 2016 for our graduating?
October 2016, that's
For
when it will open.
2017.
For the class of 2017.
Okay, and then I have one more question.
Mhm.
So I've heard a couple of different things about the expected family contribution. Is it variable depending on the school if you can use scholarships towards that? Does that go towards the expected family contribution, or does that?
No.
That doesn't impact.
That's all
That's
separate.
based on your financial income and your tax
Yep.
returns.
So if you have a ton of scholarships, that's not going to go against you.
So you're basically trying to get scholarships to alleviate the need for loans that the school would factor into your financial.
Yeah, just free money that you don't have to worry about paying back, and you can use strictly for their education.
We once had a CSUN rep that came here quite a few years ago now. And she wasn't a Chaminade graduate, but her story was quite interesting. She said that what she did is she dedicated the number of hours of a part-time job, so about 20 hours a week, towards looking for scholarships, particularly the ones with essays, because those are the ones a lot of kids say I'm not going to do, so there's a smaller pool. And she financed her education that way. So that was, she chose to do that as her part-time job and was able to finance. But you know, it takes a lot of research and a lot of self-motivation. But they're out there.
Can I clarify, were you asking, like, if a student receives a scholarship, you can use that money towards what you might be writing a
Yeah,
check
see, so
for?
that kind of.
Yes.
You said the
So I
opposite,
think we
you
misunderstood
could.
your question.
Yeah.
So yes, so that's where scholarships can come in, is that instead of you writing a check for $5,000, if your
They can get a
son or
$5,000.
daughter gets a $2,500, then you only have to pay the $2,500, and the scholarship will go straight to the school to pay for that amount.
Okay.
It doesn't go in the calculation, but it absolutely can go towards what you're having to pay to the school.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I just piggyback, because now I'm confused. So if you find a scholarship from one of these sites, $500, $1,000, then how is that money distributed? Does then it have to go to the school? And what if you find it as a freshman, sophomore, or junior? I don't understand how that then works.
Okay, there are not a lot of scholarships for freshmen,
For juniors.
sophomores. There's some for juniors. I would say in 95% of scholarship money, that money goes directly to the college that the student is attending. So you have to make sure a student's not over-awarded, because you can't just keep collecting scholarship money and get over the amount that it would cost to attend that school. So if your child's a junior and they qualify for the ABC scholarship, then they would have that money in hold for that student until they begin college. That money would go there, the fees are paid, and any overage for room and board or travel or books is then given to the student after everything is paid at the school.
Okay, but also, so as a junior, you're not sure which college you're going to?
Right.
It's through the
Those are all going to be through community organizations, employers, those kind of
So
things.
then the monies would just be there, and then once you figured out which school,
You let
they
them
would-
know.
Correct.
And they will-
Okay, even a year in advance. and
Correct,
that's
if
all
they
fine. Okay,
allow
thank you.
for juniors to apply. Then
Thank you.
yes.
To piggyback on that, if you're filling out the CSS form, do you have to report scholarships that were earned for the year before? If you're already
That is
in college?
included in the student's income.
It's included in
It's
the
income.
student's.
Yes.
That's, thank you for saying. This
It
is
is.
income that we're talking about. And it opens up the whole world of income here. Because grandpa may say, well, I told you back in the day I was gonna pay $10,000 a year towards your college, but we never set up a program for it, or 529 or anything like that. So it gets tricky. You need to talk to whomever is giving you financial advice if other people are paying for college. That's a hairy situation.
For the WUI, how you said some are based on certain programs or certain majors. If your child goes in with, let's say, a particular major, but then, because the first 2 years is usually like
Right.
GEs or general eds. So what if they suddenly change their mind and you have to pay that money back because you were in a certain program instead of
It goes year by year. So if they do switch, then yeah, you just don't get that funding anymore.
but you don't have to pay it back because you said it's
Depends on the school.
Sneaky. No, you don't.
You start fresh every year.
Some of the schools you do.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a question.
I think you might have already answered it. So let's say, for example, in January 2016, we're applying for the scholarship or the federal or the financial
FAFSA.
aid. So that goes towards graduating class of 2017, entering college at 2017. So say after the numbers get back, you decide to defer and go to community college. Do you reapply the following year or the following 2 years?
You have to fill out the FAFSA every year.
Every year,
Every
okay.
year, as long as your child is in school.
Or deferring, right, or not?
Well, if they're not, right, so, but attending community college is still a
Right.
full-time student. So again, there may be aid depending on your, but every year, even if they stay at the same school, whatever it is, every year you have to fill out the FAFSA. And that's a mistake sometimes families do make. They're like, I filled it out. And then financial aid's calling your child up and saying you didn't do this. So that's important that your family knows that you will need to do that.
One more question. When do the parents' income not count? Like when can your child, how many years?
After they graduate with their bachelor's degree.
6 years.
Okay, so with their
Once they
bachelor's
start
degree, then you don't include
once
the
in
parent income.
graduate school, they are considered independent.
So regardless of whether they're independent now or not, the parent income will be included.
Unless they're an emancipated minor, they are still considered your dependent. And don't try to emancipate your kids.
Well, I have an example of my husband and I were married already. He applied to law school. They went after his parents. They wanted to know what his parents' income were. We were married. We were in our late 20s. So it really does depend on the school.
One more question as a group, and then we'll go ahead and let people leave who needed to leave by 9.
If you have a 2016 graduate, you can apply for FAFSA now. So that the Obama change this October?
So you have a senior.
January.
You have a senior, you can't do it till January.
Got it.
When is the CSS form available?
It's on College Board, and it's October 1st it opens.
October 1st for the people that are graduating this year.
Correct.
So then October, okay.
And not every school requires the CSS. So we always say check every school's financial aid webpage to find out deadlines and requirements just to be sure.
And there is a fee for the profile. So we thank you all for coming, and we'll be around, all of us individually, for questions. And hopefully this has not raised your anxiety. There is money out there. Oh, and actually, Brother Tom has been asking to say something.
So when the letters come in, these wonderful letters with your financial aid offer, we're not financial aid experts, but we can help you, especially if maybe that's not your thing, to figure out, hey, notice this is an unsubsidized loan, okay? Oh, that means I'm paying the interest. So we can help you. Now, some people are better than others at saying to a college where their child really wants to go, get in touch with the financial aid office at that school and start a negotiating process with them. And you may have some success. Anything is better than nothing. So keep in mind that you have a few resources. But if you begin at the right place, and a lot of people these days are saying, start working with your 10th grader who has these dreams of colleges, and rather than saying, you get the grades, we'll pay for whatever you want, that's a dangerous message. Say, okay, you get great grades, we'll look at the estimated family contribution for that college. Now we're being realistic. It's like real estate. Everybody wants a house at the beach, but we can't all afford it. So don't get emotionally attached to things. My mother used to always say, because Tom, you can't have them. So that's it for us. Thank you.